Sorry, the dog just started snoring. Great ambient noise.
Can't hear it if that helps at all.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm just going to let the last few guests in from the waiting room before we get started. Thank you for your patience. Lovely. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I would like to begin by first acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am currently Zooming to you from, the Yagara and Turrbal people. I pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you all this evening for this special online soiree in celebration of Sam van Zweden's new book, Eating with My Mouth Open. We have a packed evening for you all, so I won't keep you too long. I will just mention that, as you are no doubt already aware, you have been placed on mute and you'll remain so throughout the evening, but if you do have any issues with sound or video at the moment, please feel free to message me using the chat box and I'll do my best to help you out. If you can't see the chat box at the moment, it should be towards the lower left of your screen. Don't worry too much if you still can't find it. I'm going to be using it to post the links that you can use to purchase your copies of Eating with My Mouth Open there shortly, and when I do, the chat box will pop up, so you will definitely be able to see it then. And so now that's enough from me. I'd like to introduce your MC for the evening, who'll be taking things from here, Sonia Nair. Sonia is Program Manager at the Melbourne Writers' Festival, as well as a writer and critic whose literary criticism and social commentary has been published by the Wheeler Centre, Kill Your Darlings, The Big Issue, Eureka Street, and The Lifted Brow, among others. Sonia has chaired conversations and interviews at the Emerging Writers Festival, the Melbourne Writers Festival, and Footscray Community Arts Centre. And so, Sonia, it's my pleasure to hand over to you to take things from here for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, emcee. Welcome everyone to avid readers' launch of Sam van Zweden's book, Eating with My Mouth Open, which I have here. Such a gorgeous book. Before I start, I would also like to acknowledge that this conversation is taking place across unceded lands and that I am speaking to you today on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and to the elders of all communities and cultures this conversation reaches tonight. I'm Sonia, and I'm so privileged to be able to host tonight's online reading salon commemorating the launch of Sam's book, Eating with My Mouth Open. I hope everyone's cozied up with a beloved nostalgic snack. I didn't get a chance to get my favorite South Asian snack, muruku, so I went to Coles and got these, like, I don't know, chicken palmy shapes. I haven't tried them yet, but they look like an abomination. We'll see. If people would like to share what they're snacking on in the chat function on their socials, that would be great. So I'd read excerpts of Sam's book before it was published, as I was lucky enough to be in a writer's group with her, but I was no less blown away reading her beautiful book in its entirety. If you're lucky enough to know Sam, her prose demonstrates the same generosity she extends to the people around her on a daily basis. In Eating with My Mouth Open, she's always addressing the reader, helping them anchor her story as she jumps back and forth in time and place to chart her evolving relationships with food, body, memory, and family. Eating with My Mouth Open is a visceral, big-hearted, exquisitely smart book where Sam constantly questions the contradictions and complexities of our relationship with food, sketching an intricate web of people, places, and dishes while doing so. I don't recommend reading it while hungry because you will, be reaching for whatever, I don't know, snacks you have in your pantry, which in my case are only these shapes. As critic Beck Kavanagh wrote in a review of Eating with My Mouth Open that was published in The Guardian last week, this is more than just a story about food. It is the stories we tell ourselves about food and the stories that food tells about us. Tonight, we'll hear readings from 4 excellent writers, a short speech from Harriet to launch the book, and last but not least, from the star herself, Sam van Zweden, who will read us an excerpt from her book. But first up, we have Eloise Zaslavsky. Alice is culinary correspondent for the ABC and author of the smash hit cookbook of 2020, In Praise of Veg. She's also the founder of Phenomenon, a digital toolkit helping teachers and parents encourage positive relationships with food and learning in the next generation of eaters and leaders. Please welcome Alice.
Thank you, Sonia. The benefit of writing your own bio, right? You can say whatever you want about your book, Sam. So for just a note to all the authors out there, you can say whatever you want about your book. But yes, thank you very much for the introduction. This is not from In Praise of Veg, but it should be. If I had more room, I would certainly write pages and pages, chapters perhaps, about avocado. There's a reason why demographics expert and celebrity boomer Bernard Salt's equating our avocado consumption to housing investments has stuck fast in our collective consciousness like grease stains to a share house range hood. Salt, a seasoned social commentary professional, couldn't have been more on the money, really, because thanks to a conflagration of socioeconomic and political factors, conspicuous consumption of smashed avo with the odd sunny side upper is currently about as close to a satisfying nest egg as our generation's going to get. So when you open up an avo that's bruised, battered, and browning before your eyes, it's like someone's trudged mud through the carpets of your new flat while the ink on your settlement papers is still drying. Now, of course, it's probably the boomers getting handsy. After all, they can afford to hassle their house into submission and lose a few casualties along the way. But if we're to survive this redistribution of assets, it's much nicer to read actually because there's a lot of puns in here, but read distribution. Thank you. Good. Thank you, Fiona. We need to band together and stop feeling the need to squeeze the shiitake out of every shepherd on the shelf. I wasn't always an avocado activist, mind you. I was perfectly happy to dawdle down the fresh food aisle, giving the odd alligator pear a pat on its round a bit like, bless you, any other self-respecting food fondler. But after one sunk cost salad too many, I knew it was time to speak out before things get any worse. It's a rarer avocado type. What is a sunk cost salad, you ask? Well, it's the kind where you do everything right. Sniff out the best tomatoes on the truss and Lebanese cucumbers, they're always the sweetest. Find a red capsicum that's firm and glossy, Spanish onion you triple dancing lady emoji over, pink salt flakes, grassy olive oil with a fancy label, a crack of pep, and then in goes the avocado. Except this bit happens in slow motion because as you scoop the spotty flesh out of its seemingly untouched shell, a foulness emanates that should stop you dead in your tracks. But you've already sunk so much money, time, and energy into this bowl that you think to yourself, how bad could it be? Real bad. Dire enough for me to write an op-ed about it, imploring an audience of my peers. Next time you're faced with a gaggle of Gwen at the shops, resist before you reach. Read the labels. Many thoughtful traders have started to separate their stocks into traffic light systems, or some for now, some for Ron piles. If you're out of luck on the labelling front, tread lightly. Pick up a shiny specimen by the rump as you would an infant and give it a press on the tapered tip. If you get some give, you're good to go. Better yet, if there's a stem intact and you're still not sure, press the nub into the flesh. If it yields without too much trouble, like Jon Snow to Daenerys, it's ready to bend the knee straight into your basket. My fellow millennials, in our clamouring to buy the best brunch bang for buck, we're a hazard to ourselves and each other. And it doesn't have to be this way. Please, squeeze responsibly. Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for having me as a part of this. It's such a joy to have gotten to read this book before it was published, and such a joy to see it out in the world and topping the charts. Congratulations. Brilliant. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Alice. What a great way to kick off the evening. That was a really viscerally funny piece. Our second reader for tonight is Eda Gunaydin. Eda is a Turkish-Australian essayist and researcher whose writing explores class, race, and diaspora. You can find her work in the Sydney Review of Books, Meanjin, The Lifted Brow, and others. Her debut is forthcoming in 2022. Please welcome Edda.
Thank you so much. Hi, folks. I hope I'm coming through okay. If not, please, one of the people not muted, just shout out and tell me to shout out. Before I start reading, I want to say congratulations, Sam. This is so fantastic. I was just reflecting earlier today and sort of thinking, when did I first become familiar with your work? And it occurred to me that almost a millennia ago, i.e. in 2015, we were both finalists for the Scribe Nonfiction Award. And then and then I was also reflecting, oh, the last book launch I went to was almost fully 1 year ago now for Eleanor Savage's launch of Blueberries, and she was another finalist. And I thought, whoa, am I in the Matrix, etc., etc. But more importantly, like, it's almost been a full year since I've been to a launch, and it's nice to finally feel like we're back in community again and all those lovely things. So thank you and congrats. And I also want to say that I am not in Melbourne. I am joining everyone from Gadigal land today, which is also unceded. Okay, and I'll just be reading an excerpt from an essay that was published last year as part of Liminal Mag's taste chapbook, and it's called Shit Eating. I see us eating well without living well. Most people in my social circle readily identify as foodies, having grown up consuming a steady diet of MasterChef and aesthetically busted avocado on toast. At a friend's most recent birthday party, we 20-somethings gathered in a circle to feast on andouille and organic honey. We scooped up the latter with tiny spoons after gently cracking through the raw honeycomb's wooden frame, which oozed and spilled out in pornographic slow motion. None of us will ever own a home. My friend's flat was a nearly condemned building in Chippendale with black mold climbing up the walls, rented out primarily to students precisely because of their low standards and its proximity to Sydney University. The following week, the kitchen shelves fell from the wall in one piece, shattering all their glassware into all their food. When I indulge in something cutting edge with brioche or fennel or goat's cheese or edible flowers, it's most often eaten at home. But I'm not wrapped in a dressing gown with freshly moisturized legs splayed across my chaise lounge. Instead, I'm in my pajamas, braless and with my skin broken out, because I'm too tired to have cooked anything. In these moments, it usually means that I've finished my work done at work, and now upon arriving home, have to complete the work which is supposed to be more leisurely because it's work done at home. When I was 15, I watched episodes of MasterChef sitting in front of a bowl of Kraft mac and cheese I'd microwaved myself for dinner. Call me aspirational. It's easy, I think, and tempting to congratulate the increased accessibility of being able to self-identify as a foodie. After all, the existence of things like degustations at different price points make a formerly bourgeois experience accessible to youths in the middle class. We could interpret this as a sign of upward mobility into a class we may in fact never succeed at entering, but it's also one that we probably should not aspire to enter. Another term for this argument is the Charcuterie Discourse, so called by me following a recent protracted Twitter argument between different factions of the left regarding whether charcuterie is bourgeois and anti-communist and whether we all should or should not get to eat it. The negative argument is as follows. Rich people can afford to eat it, and you don't want to be rich, do you? That's a shootable offense. The affirmative argument tries a different tack. Taste is not classed. Smoked meats are delightful regardless of who you are, and we should all want them for our comrades. If everyone got to be middle class and enjoy middle class coded treats, then that would mean there was no such thing as class because we would all be able to access luxury. To that, I will say, charcuterie is in fact Islamophobic. Think about it, and then invest in my halal charcuterie startup. I think about this particular instantiation of foodie culture as an Australian export, dispersed via the soft power of MasterChef Australia. Have you ever watched any other MasterChef series? They prepare sandwiches. They prepare eggs. Eggs made of eggs, and not a 9-component dessert crafted to look like an egg. Not the simulacrum of an egg, but an actual egg. How embarrassing. There is no more ham-heavy, charcuterie-oriented land than Spain, where I lived for 6 months in 2014. And yet, Spanish people my age thought the notion of queuing to eat someplace special rather offensive. They usually preferred to go to the taperia closest to their flat with the cheapest tinto, where they would smoke and share basic bitch tortilla de patatas and montaditos on sad white bread. During my time in Spain, I stopped drinking coffee wholesale, unable to stomach the torrefacto beans. And there was also the question of the coffee making itself. Staff would turn on the milk wand on a several €1,000 espresso machine, letting it sputter, positively shouting and spewing into the jug in agony, while they walked away, potted, and laconically returned later. What you got after this inexpert ordeal was burned shit. In Australia, gourmet culture manifests in a strange winner-takes-all. One place will have a queue wrapped down the street, while its next-door neighbour will quietly go under. When I was 21, I worked at a cafe on King Street in Newtown called Tango Flavors, which was run by an Argentinian family. 4 weeks after opening, they suddenly stopped giving me shifts. I had 2 other jobs, so I never followed up, figuring they were experiencing teething pains. 2 weeks later, the cafe's doors were shuttered, replaced by a lentil as anything. Learning to make coffee as a barista in Australia, we were directed never to let the wand produce any sound other than that of paper tearing. Crisp, clean, quiet, and intentional. This was supposed to introduce the smallest possible bubbles of air into the milk and help to generate a foam that looked like wet paint rather than dish soap. Australia has a coffee culture, I would try to explain to European friends my age. We had single-handedly managed to drive Starbucks out of the continent. They thought largely that I was a snob, I think, and obnoxious, which I am, until the day I heard from another Australian that an Australian cafe, as it was described on the website, was operating in Malasaña, which is the hip part of Madrid. There, I had my first cup of Spanish coffee that didn't make me want to kill myself, which was funny because I always want to kill myself in a way that has no relation to whether I do or do not have access to brunch. I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Edda. That was one of my favorite reads of 2020. So it was a pleasure to hear you read it out loud. Our next reader is Fiona Wright. Fiona is a writer, editor, and critic. Her book of essays, Small Acts of Disappearance, won the 2016 Kibble Award and the Queensland Literary Award for Nonfiction. And her new essay collection is The World Was Whole. She's currently working on a book about medical histories and cultures and the place of women within them. Please give it up for Fiona.
Hi. Oh, I'm on. I'm also coming to you live from Gadigal land, although I'm from Darawal land in the southwest of Sydney. And I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm so excited for this launch and for Sam's book. I see the link is now here and you should all buy it. And this feels like a particularly fortuitous piece to be reading on the back of both Alice's and Edda's for reasons that will become clear shortly. It's new, it's a bit silly, but you know, that's what I felt like doing, so I did. And it doesn't have a title. My girlfriend and I have been watching baking shows in our backyard this summer, across those dusky, muggy nights that I love so much at this time of year. This has surprised me for a whole host of reasons, but most importantly, because I have never been a fan of cooking shows. Not even, or not especially when they're at their height of popularity. when our major newspapers ran recaps as landing page stories each week, when my family's conversations would revolve around exactly who had cooked exactly what 3 ways, and my eldest niece, who was barely a toddler at the time, would rate my mother's dinners for presentation as well as taste, or when the sales of any particular ingredient, ling or lamb or loganberries, would skyrocket at Coles the week after a contestant used it in a challenge-winning dish. I never saw the appeal, in no small part because my illness meant that I never could imagine eating any of the dishes that anyone prepared. For me, there was nothing pornographic in the food porn that these shows were offering, nothing I desired or wanted to touch or eat. And without that, all you're left with is a bunch of moderately attractive people cutting up vegetables for the best part of an hour. And yet somehow now this is where I find myself. Evenings stretching after evening, a few episodes at a time. We've watched a few different series in fits and starts that really settled in and let things intensify with what my girlfriend first referred to as a classic from her homeland, complete with its cutaway shots of squirrels and buttercups and like fucking enormous mallard ducks. It's a full decade since the Great British Bake Off first aired, and the skinny jeans and feathered haircuts are testament to that. So I know full well that I'm very late to the party. I never could have expected how much I've grown to love the show, and how it's not just for how often someone says something like scrummy or totty buys or oh my giddy aunt, or refers to a 25 degree day as unbearably hot. In hindsight, I guess I should not have been so startled. My relationship with baking is and always has been different from the one I have with cooking, although it's no less strange. I bake often and I bake a lot, but even here, it's never even with a glancing consideration that I might eat what results. What we categorize as food, what we deem edible or otherwise, is not a rational, natural, or universal process. There are always cultural and historical, as well as physiological reasons for what falls in or inside or outside of its boundaries. For more information, see Sam's book. It isn't food. It's never food that I'm making when I bake, although I'm still not sure exactly what it is that I consider it instead. What I have always loved about baking is the process, how methodical and measured it is, how sensory and physical. My brain slows down and grows quieter. And I sometimes think it's this that for me is luxury, the treat. I keep making the obvious joke to my girlfriend that it's clear to me that the main reason we're both enjoying the Great British Bake Off is that it speaks to things that we're both good at. I am good at baking, and she is good at being British. I'm being flippant here, of course, because really what I hadn't realized is that there's a particular kind of pleasure that comes with watching people compete at something that you understand, something for which you know the rules, and even something of the physicality of the tasks. In case it's not obvious, I don't play or watch sport either. Often when we're watching the Bake Off, there's this little thrill I get when I spot something going wrong. It feels a little like solving a murder mystery early. The small charge when you see something long before the narrative reveals that it's important. Nor had I known that another of the pleasures baked into these shows, sorry, I couldn't help chucking in a couple of cooking puns as well. Something lends it to it. Another of the pleasures is about learning, that there's something beautifully nerdy in the way the contestants explain their tips and tricks, and in what you pick up, be you baker or layperson, as episode by episode, different people use the same difficult ingredients, take the same precautions, or make the same mistakes. I love the way this learning feels, that sense of elasticity in the brain, and I definitely didn't expect to find this in foodie TV. Don't think that any of this is new, of course, to those people who watched these shows in their heyday, close to a decade ago. But it's taken me this long to soften, to temper some of that fierce disdain that I had then, and that even then I always knew was tinged with a quiet, more desperate hurt. It's a strange thing, disdain. So often we assume that it's bestowed upon the things we feel are far beneath us, that there's always some kind of superiority involved. But I think that the opposite is true, that disdain is far more often defensive. It did feel, and I still do, that there was something ridiculous in the high seriousness with which cravated judges contemplated cassoulets, something grossly fetishistic about the whole high drama of the affair. But 10 years on, these competitive cooking shows, but 10 years ago, these competitive cooking shows and the people who loved them so felt like just one more reminder of my unnormality. Everybody loves this. It felt to me, the billboards, the sides of buses, the internet adverts were all saying, everybody loves this, except for you. These last weeks, I've been baking. There's nothing unusual about this, except that I've been baking different things I'd previously written off as too complicated, or things that I'd tried once before without success and so never attempted again. I'm like that. I bought a set of piping tools and practiced making rosettes and borders and flowers, something I've always, I realized, wanted to do, but never felt skilled enough to try. I made choux pastry because my girlfriend loves eclairs, and I promptly learned that the flexible zigzagging spikes of the tip that you use to pipe the dough also mean that you shouldn't clean it by pushing a finger through. Those fuckers are really sharp. I rolled out and rested the dough for chocolate croissants across 2 days in the middle of a heat wave, an actual heat wave, not just an English one. And when these in particular turned out perfectly, flaky and puffy and golden brown, I was delighted. I felt that glowing within me, a sense of skill or satisfaction that's not quite pride, and for which the best word that I have still is mastery. Mastery is an awful word. It's one that was pressed upon me by a psychologist some years ago as part of a toolkit of healthy coping strategies. And it's very much this jargon that makes me uncomfortable with it. But it's a feeling that thrills me for its sense of competence and control and of triumph, all the more so when that triumph is incredibly trivial. I also love building IKEA furniture for this reason, but that's both another story and I think good evidence that I am actually insane. Now, I'm not mentioning this recent baking because I'm crediting these shows with inspiration, not exactly, and certainly not with personal growth. I think it's just that they've provided the right environment for this kind of playfulness to take hold. And another joy that I'd forgotten is the one that happens when your hands learn something new. What I keep thinking of is how in each series of the Great British Bake Off, there's at least one contestant who's usually a young woman and more often than not a young mother, who's sweet and kind, but nervous, always nervous, if not downright filled with shame. One who bites her lip or hangs her head when placing her cake before the judges, or who preemptively tells them exactly how it's wrong. And as the show progresses, as she bakes and learns and succeeds with new recipes and techniques, you see her confidence visibly grow. You see her start to come into herself. Twice I've had these young women pegged as disordered eaters because of a particular set of the mouth or shoulders, a way of handling certain sticky ingredients, of hearing criticism as absolute and total. We've got a way of sniffing each other out. And I think if the Great British Bake Off were an American series, or even an Australian one, the narrating voice would labour away at a metaphor for this, would talk about the way raw ingredients are transformed or alchemized by the baking process, how bread or sponge cake rises in the oven, or almonds turn sweeter and fuller in flavour under heat. But I don't believe in transformation, and I'm especially cautious around narratives that ascribe food any kind of power, all the more so those that equate heat or hardship with unequivocally positive change. It's also not that the Britishness of the Bake Off makes it resist this kind of metaphor, by the way. It's just that its hosts are far too busy making baffling jokes about the French. I'm more interested in the way that these women become more playful with their baking, start experimenting with less caution, and start having more fun. The sense I have that their pleasure too is unexpected. I still don't eat my baking, even when what I've made is different, or difficult, or new. Because this isn't about transformation. All I'm talking about here is unexpected, possibly belated, and wonderfully ordinary joy. It's such a special thing to be a part of this evening tonight. Especially one of the things I love about these Zoom events is how many familiar faces you see, but also how many familiar names that you don't necessarily have a face for. the people who you don't know, except by name and by Twitter. So it's really wonderful to see so much of the community here. And congratulations, Sam. I know how hard you worked on this book, and it's such a fine achievement.
Thank you so much for that beautiful, evocative piece about foodie TV, baking, and so much more, Fiona. The final of our 4 readers is Eloise Grills. Eloise is an award-winning writer, artist, critic, and poet. Her work has been published in many places, including The Rumpus, Meandering, Cosmonauts Avenue, and Kill Your Darlings. She's currently working on her first full-length book, an illustrated memoir called Big Beautiful Female Theory, about big, fat, sexy bodies. It will be published by Affirm Press in early 2022. Please use your virtual ways to make Eloise feel welcome.
Hi, thank you very much, Sonia. And yeah, I just want to say congratulations to Sam. I'm incredibly honoured to be asked to read. I consider Sam to be one of my idols, and also, I hope, a good friend. So I'm actually going to share some visuals, so you won't have to look at my face the whole time, which I'm sure you would have enjoyed anyway, but yeah, let's do something different. All right. Sorry, just tick. Got this open, but now I can't get my document open. I think I might have to do it like this, unfortunately. Let me, sorry, I should have checked this in more detail. Let me just zoom in slightly. No, okay. All right, so this is a piece called Hunger Cues, which is it still up there, or can you see my document?
Yep. Good. We can see the visuals.
Okay, good. And this is from my forthcoming collection. It's changing and shifting a lot, but it's one of the essays from the collection. So it's called Hunger Cues. I was 5 in the back of Grandy's car. She gave me a whole roll of Hubba Bubba gum, one of those rolls that look like measuring tape. With pluck and hedonism well beyond my years, I embraced Mae West axiom, too much of a good thing can be wonderful. I crammed it whole into my mouth, trying to both chew and breathe, my mouth filled with purple goo and excited purple saliva. I choked. Grandy had to pull over to fish the colossal lump from the depths of my grape-stained throat. I'm not angry with you, Eloise. I'm just disappointed. I played these unbecoming, choking fishing games often. I remember hard-boiled lollies wrapped in bonbon paper, sucking them down into the deep recess of my windpipe, my mother's long fingers delicately extracting them from my gullet. Once I ate a whole box of my mum's Maltesers and replaced them, then had to replace the replacement. What's better than quality? Quantity. How do you know when the meal is finished? It's over when I can't stand up anymore. All you can eat dining is no longer in vogue in Australia. Is this because eating too much is now considered gauche? The flood of restaurants like Smorgies, Sizzler, and all-you-can-eat Pizza Huts, which spread across the Australian suburbs in the 80s and 90s, have all but dried up. Most likely it was food safety and hygiene laws that killed these cheap, gorging palaces, what with their lofty standards and aversion to lukewarm mayo. The joy of Smorgies on the Geelong Wharf, a cornucopia of fried potato, fried calamari, fried chicken, self-serve ice cream bars, cookies, jelly, and oft-neglected salad bar. The animatronic show where Salty the Seal and King Neptune made quips about Geelong footballers, probably already 10 years out of date when the restaurant opened its doors. With its weird water features, plastic plants, and shining replica seahorses, Smorgy was the kind of underwater fantasy land commensurate with what I'd seen in The Little Mermaid. Except instead of sea creatures frolicking out of harm's way, we siphon them down our throats. There's a theory that the famous Upper Paleolithic Venus figurines, those small-headed, big-bellied statuettes of the Stone Age, were actually self-portraits, moulded after women's own bodies, looking down while pregnant, though I like to think with their bellies very, very full. There are so many ways to say that you're full. I am sated, stuffed, crammed. I packed it in, I wolfed it down. I made a pig of myself and blew my house to the ground. I've eaten myself out of house, out of home, alone. I put it away, put her away. Always hungry? How to tell if you really need to eat. How to recognize when you're full before you eat way too much again. 3 signals you have eaten enough. 7 telling signs you're overeating and what to do. 8 signs you're overeating. 9 reasons you're hungry all the time. My parents and I go on buffets on holidays. My parents and I arm with big white plates, 3 platefuls clean and then 1 for dessert. I'll grind your bread to make more bread. My parents and I, the white whales, gorging. I saw Eloise Grills dancing with the deviled eggs. I spy someone eating something not available at the buffet. I spy fried chicken over there. I swear. When we went to the States, we mostly ate drive-through along the side of the interstate. But when we got to the dusty outskirts of Missouri, we couldn't stand the lack of greenery anymore. So we went to the Golden Corral, a buffet which later became the Gorging Corral in family law. Plates and plates for $9.95, free soft drink. The hostess said she'd never met anyone from Austria before. Have you seen that episode of The Simpsons where Homer eats the entire all-you-can-eat buffet and sues the owners because they kick him out before he's full? The episode where Homer eats until he is super fat and his wife doesn't want to fuck him anymore. The episode where Homer enters an eating competition and his competitor dies, and then Homer becomes a trucker for some reason. In The Simpsons, the spectacle of Homer's gorging stands in for Americans' greed. I remember in the 90s, however, men I knew proudly identifying with Homer's excessive appetite, wearing t-shirts to family barbecues emblazoned with glistening pink donuts. One design, Homer, hard belly jutting upwards like a table, beer can resting on it, with a slogan, living the vida sofa. How to separate need from want, hunger from thirst, an article, when you're hungry for something specific, you aren't really hungry. Funny because I could eat a horse drowning in lukewarm mayo. How long does it take to feel satisfied? 20 minutes? After seconds? After thirds? 20 years? A lifetime? An unpredetermined gestational period? Are we full yet? In movies like Jaws, once a shark gets a taste for human meat, we know the characters are toast. Maybe we are all one bad day, one accidental nibble away from scoffing slabs of mortal flesh. And then anarchy, old women snatching babies up like trophies. A huge pot in the forest with garlic cloves and fresh herbs like a tepid, salty bath. The meal isn't over when I'm finished. The meal won't end, not even when I'm dead. But maybe when we're all dead and buried and the worms eat us and then the birds eat them, then the birds are eaten by someone or something else. And then whatever that is eats them and is eaten too, and so on. Then the world itself will be eaten like an ice cream scoop by some god or being with a bigger appetite than we could ever comprehend. And then something or other eats that god, and so on, until each cosmic accident is hoovered up like warm ice cream soup. Then may we leave the table, please? But yeah, I just want to say, this is a fantastic book, and I was really very excited to blurb it. And yeah, Sam, you should be so proud of yourself. It's an incredible achievement.
Thank you so much, Eloise, for that visually arresting piece about a topic I'm perennially interested in, the difference between hunger and want. And to all 4 of our wonderful readers, if this was an IRL event, there'd be waves of rolling applause right now, but for now you might have to content yourself with the clapping emoji on our screens. I'd now like to invite Harriet McInerney from New South to say a few words about eating with my mouth open.
Thanks so much, Sonia. Hello, everyone. I just want to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the lands of the Gadigal and Mongol people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I wanted to share a quote from right at the end of Eating with My Mouth Open to start with. Sam says, "In writing my body, I have charted its rewriting too. There is a body of text, but there is also the other thing, the text of the body. In reading this book, we see how our bodies, our mouths, our hungers can be written and rewritten, opened up and dissected, packaged into a delicious meal, or left in a shambles by a baking mishap. But no matter what, they should be celebrated. They are always worthy of our delight. Sam van Zweden has a powerful skill for melding the everyday and the universal, teaching us how to nourish ourselves over and over again. This is a rare gem of a book, or perhaps more fittingly, a rare and special cake, the kind made by your grandparents, but only at a certain time of year, for a certain occasion, the kind you believe has been passed down from generation to generation before you realize it was taken from a woman's weekly book in the 60s, and that makes it all the more magical. This is not a simple narrative of the body and foods that we live off. That would be too bland. Rather, Sam offers a continual, joyous investigation, one that delights in curiosity and in taking the bigger bite, in always diving deeper. This event has been an incredible testament to Sam, not only as a writer, but as a community builder. A meal is better shared, and so too, I think, is a reading. It has been such a pleasure to hear from Alice, Edda, Fiona, Eloise, and Sonia too. Each of these writers are eating at the boundaries and helping us shape and reimagine what to write food and to write the body is today. And thank you so much for sharing your work with us tonight. It has been an incredible pleasure to work with Sam on Eating with My Mouth Open at New South. It's the kind of book that had built such a hype before the manuscript was even delivered that people kept asking me for proof copies. It's the kind of book that was the source of endless puns, which really they're the bread and butter of publishing people. It got out of hand, but we've reined it in. The blurb's not too much. But Sam, it has been such a treat to work with you. Your continuous intelligence and generosity have not been unnoticed. And these are qualities that are bound deep, deep within the pages of this book. And on that note, I encourage everyone to buy the book. Here it is. It's available at Avid Reader. And I also encourage you to buy the book of everyone and to seek out the work of everyone who's shared tonight. It would be very much well worth your time. Thank you so much to Avid Reader for hosting tonight, particularly to Emma Kate, to Chrissy Neen for being here. And my deep, deep congratulations, Sam. This is a book that will mean so much to so many people, and I just hope your night and everyone's here is delicious.
Thank you so much, Harriet. Finally, we have Sam herself, who will be doing a reading from her book. Take it away, Sam.
Thank you, Son. Just having a little cry here. Thank you, Harriet, for the incredibly kind words and your incredible work on this book. I think your compassion and your care and your attention has really made it what it is. So thank you. I also, before I read, want to just say thank you to everybody who's read tonight. To Son for emceeing. She's a dear friend and a wonderful writer in her own right, so thank you. To Alice, Edda, Fiona and Eloise, all of your works have been really important to me while writing this, after writing it. Fiona, your mentorship while I was writing it made a huge difference and kept me going, so thank you. Big thanks to my family, some of whom are here tonight. You've always made room for me to write, and I appreciate it so much. My beautiful friends, there's a bunch of faces and names that I can see on my screen tonight, and I haven't seen some of you in so long, and it's so nice to see you. So thank you for coming along, and thank you for all your support. And importantly to New South for making this an incredibly beautiful object, and for putting faith in it when, you know, it could have gone either way. So thank you. So tonight I'm going to read from chapter 11 of the book, which I think is sort of a good primer for a bunch of the things that are in there. It started, for me, as a question about why memory is so persistent around food, why all this significance hangs upon eating. Or, well, no, that sounds short-sighted and clinical, and I know that that isn't where it started. Not really. Its starting point is less located in language, not a formulated or conscious question, but something born in my body and in feeling. It starts in my skin. My memories of food live throughout my body. Sometimes those pieces light up again in tasting. I taste with my hands, I taste with my eyes and my ears. There is a link between memory and my body. If it weren't for all this remembering, I might just fall apart. It started in battle and it followed me home in the moments of respite. Survivor's guilt. My body, with its tingling extremities, its tingling center. My body becomes alive with memory when I eat, and its starting point is in my skin. That really quite flimsy membrane that sits between me and the world, between what I am and what the world is. My body lets memory in at the same time as it exudes memory. Memories seem to come from both within and without. It's strange that sense memory doesn't start on my tongue. You'd think the taste buds would be the home of all food memories, but they're not. It's the other things that mediate my experience in the world. My eyes, which see beautiful desserts and appreciate their architectural aspects. My nose, which transports smell, and with it the memory of one of Dad's workplaces where I smell lobster. My ears, burnt butter sounds like white noise. And my hands, the memory of making, serving, and eating. My whole body is in. It's the hokey pokey of the memory. When I encounter mangoes, I'm transported to the memory of climbing aboard a tram from the Queen Victoria Market to North Melbourne. I say encounter because I'm not only talking about eating. This memory wakes up when I smell mangoes or when I hold one in my palm. The memory rocks gently from side to side and I feel the sun on my bare legs. I'm cupping a huge mango in my hand. I'm travelling home with my lover. The mangoes are an extension of our confident bodies. Then even further back to porcupined mangoes, the bright flesh of the fruit sticking out at angles like puzzle pieces, evidence of my father's sure knife skills. Then back to the tram and the sun. Forward again to the house in North Melbourne. The memory aches in my palms. They feel again the question mark curve of hand against mango, echoing the curve of hand against breast. The boldness of a fruit, having such a large single seed at its centre. We drank smoothies in bed. We drank up all the summer we could get, drank one another. My fingers tingle with a sugary tack of mango juice. When I eat mangoes, I remember tangled bedsheets. My nose, my legs, the palms of my hands are all destined to appreciate mangoes. They're all part of the anticipation before the mango goes anywhere near my mouth. Media and Cultural Studies academic Ben Highmore suggests that, quoting, to concentrate on taste to the exclusion of other senses means to fail to recognise that the experience of eating is also dependent on the haptic sensitivity of tongues and mouths and on sight and sound. The cacophony of crunching might actually be part of the flavour of potato chips, for example. The experience of flavour doesn't only live in the mouth, and so the memory of flavour must surely be elsewhere too. Perhaps memory itself is essential to flavour. Perhaps in eating comfort foods, we're ingesting comfort as much as food. Studies have shown that comfort foods are as comforting as they are because of their association with the loved ones who fed them to us, more so than any qualities inherent to the food themselves. Perhaps mangoes would taste different without the porcupine and the palm cupping and the summer and the lover. Strawberry creams might just be cloyingly sweet without that gift from my brother. But the problem of food is that it seems simple. It's something we have to interact with every day, and so might easily be taken for granted. It's so normal, so necessary, that we hardly think of it at all. It's just fuel, and if you stop eating, you die. But if it's a simple food in, energy out transaction, then why can't I just eat a mango and have it be a delicious mango? Why are these mango memories so insistent in my body? The memory tingles on my face, in my palms, against my teeth. When I eat, when I feel, when I crave, these are the times that my senses can become overwhelmed and memories bustle in. I remember particular foods, but I also remember all the stories that I have created around them. These memories come with attachments. Mangoes are tied up in the push and pull of seasonal food and the effects this has on my mood. They're too much a part of the story of a particular summer and of all the summers of my life. In the first volume of Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, the narrator eats a madeleine with some tea and is visited by memories of his life that he had previously thought were lost to him. The past holds the narrator's body captive, and memory is enacted through his senses, until he arrives at the conclusion that the memory doesn't reside in him, but rather that it is him. He relives the memory viscerally from the inside out. Anyone else with the same tea and biscuit would have remembered something entirely different, or nothing at all. Not all foods feel tethered in this way. Proust's narrator's memory isn't a prop or a thing located away in the past. It is his very self. It is the reminders that swim up through all it's been and is present in his body. His body relives his memories, the shock of an unexpected memory, jostling in on a smell or sound or taste. I think I have found a kindred eater and rememberer in Proust and the narrator of Remembrance of Things Past. I too am possessed and haunted by the past. I worry whether the writing of personal stories and memoir means that I look backward too much, too often, and search for meaning where there is none. But then my guiding gut feeling points back to the persistent question, isn't there meaning in everything that appears to me? Doesn't there have to be? And if these memories are so insistent, surely there's something in there. I'm not latching onto memory, rather memory latches onto me. At the time, setting the table with my brother was nothing. It was a daily ritual, a chore, nothing. Now I dissect it. I poke at it until it speaks and insist that it has something to say. Writing down is a process of learning the language that my memories favour. And while it's comforting to think of pinning down memory through language, it's also baffling. Understanding how my memories come back doesn't do much to explain why. It doesn't unravel this tangle of eating and remembering. Dutifully, I recreate my mind for the page, creating chains from it. I weave, stitch, tie, follow, chase. But also this. My memories are fizzly fireworks. They shoot skyward, driven by quiet energy, and then explode in all directions. Sometimes the colours change. Sometimes there's a third or fourth explosion on the way down. Sometimes they're an underwhelming little dot that looks like it might turn into something beautiful, but just squiggles away into the night in almost silence. Nothing. Thank you very much for coming along tonight and for all the readers for reading. And thanks, Son.
Thank you so much, Sam. Such a treat to hear you read from your gorgeous book. That signals the end of our launch event tonight. Please buy this book if you haven't already. And if all of you could switch on your cameras and unmute yourselves to cheers for Sam, now is the time.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I'm going to let you all take yourselves off mute now. I have to ask you to do so with these new Zoom settings, but thank you everybody so much. Thank you, Sonia, for emceeing. Thank you, Sam. Thank you to all of our readers. I'm going to get you off mute now, so you should be able to join us. Congratulations, Sam. Thank you, everyone.
Beautiful, Sam.
Well done, Sam.
Good on you, Sam.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks, Sam.
Gorgeous.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely rest of the evening.
You too. Thanks,
Good,
Emma.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
I'm going to do the thing where I talk first so that other people
Do
feel
it.
happy to talk.
That was amazing. Thank you, guys.
It's so lovely to be here, Sam. I hope you feel super loved.
I do. Feeling the love. Also, it was just so nice and cozy.
That's the thing.
Hey.
I do have to run off, but thanks so much for having me. And I wish we could be in person and get drunk together.
I know, we'll do it ASAP.
Yeah, fabulous. Because that's what a launch is really about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. See you later, guys.
Night.
Bye. All right. I'm gonna head off and have some dinner, but thank you so much. And that was wonderful. And I love that bit of your book. So thank you so much for reading that.
Thanks, Eloise, and thanks for your bit. It was gorgeous. Can't wait to see it between covers.
Finally, eventually. But no, you should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
All right. I'm going to sign off too, and maybe give the family people a phone call.
That's good. Yay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.